Scions of the Southland number 237. We're back to the I guess we're starting this midweek thing during football season because there's too much happening in this fall that matters between volleyball and football. This is a volleyball only episode, aside for this part right here, where the basketball schedules came out for both the men's and women's team. That is the full ACC slates. Um, we are stuck with North Carolina again on both the men's and women's sides to start the year. The men will actually play Duke before New Year's it rolls around. Weird factoids about this. They will play 7 straight home games to start the season, to be the most since 1980, which is nice, and then 19 total games at home, which is their most in a few years. So if you buy season tickets, you'll get the bang for your buck this year. Hopefully a lot of points for your buck because we do not play many high-powered teams in McCamish until ACC season rolls around outside of the Oklahoma game, but that's in Norman. So the only time I will root against Trae Young will be that night right there. The women also, as I mentioned, play UNC to start ACC play. They also have the weird Education Day home opener again, which is when they play a game in the morning for a bunch of elementary school kids to show up. And let me tell you, being in an arena with 4,000 plus elementary school kids screaming at the top of their voices at pitches that I can't achieve any longer and never have, considering the testosterone I have, earplugs are required. But if you want to show up to a 10:30 a.m. Women's basketball game later this fall against Winthrop, that's available for you. Okay, the real stuff. This is why we're here. Georgia Tech Volleyball has 2 very important games that begin their ACC slate this Friday, including against number 1 Pitt. And thankfully, I've got a friend of multiple years who we met, 3 4 years ago at this point, when we were both covering college basketball for our respective student papers at Tech and Loyola Chicago, which, if that name strikes fear into the hearts of Tech fans, it should, because that was that game in Indianapolis. Abby Schnable from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is here, who covers Pitt Volleyball, amongst other things. Thanks for hanging with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's crazy that I was explaining to someone that our friendship goes back to that 2021 game and then I saw you again when I was covering Wisconsin and now we're both covering elite volleyball teams.
It's so fun. A weird how things cross. I remember that day in Indianapolis still very viscerally. Not for great reasons. I mean, mainly because Moses Wright didn't play. And ask any Tech basketball fan, and they are gonna blame that. But what can I say? Mama Jean and Cameron Krutwig were not on our side that day. So, and she's still alive. She's still alive, isn't she? She hasn't died yet.
Yeah, she just turned 105 last
Oh my
month.
God!
So
Wow. Okay. Well, uh, sure. I'll just pencil them in to win another natty. They haven't won one, but they gotta do one for the oldest basketball fan alive. Okay, back to volleyball. So this weekend begins ACC play. Tech only lost to UCLA to start the season. Every other match they won, including they beat Georgia most recently. They beat Florida in McCamish Pavilion 3-1 for their first win ever in McCamish Pavilion, which was a big freaking deal. And they are sitting very nicely high up in a lot of the advanced stat categories, especially in serve points. We play SMU, who has beat Nebraska of all teams, and then lost to unranked. I think it was Loyola Marymount they lost to. So they're weird. But then we also play Pitt, who is not weird because all they do is steamroll teams, and it's really scary. Abby, you have watched every point of this team. When I say I have never been more scared for Tech to play an opponent, it's it's this Sunday. Thankfully, it's in O'Keefe at home. Um, but just give me the lowdown of why this Final Four team suddenly seems to be way better than they were from last year.
so we knew coming in that they were going to be good because they returned all of their starters except for their 2 middle blockers, but one of their middle blockers was who was supposed to start last year in Bree Kelly, transferred from Florida, and
Hmm.
she was supposed to be the starting middle blocker. But got injured and missed most of last season. So
Okay.
you enter her into the lineup on top of the other starters, and
Hmm.
then really the only person you're adding in is Ryla Jones, freshman middle blocker. So you're stacked on experience because when you look on it, every single person has been to at least one Final Four. A
Yep.
majority of those starters have been to three. Some of
Yes.
them have only been to two. The experience there is just insane.
It's
And
nuts.
then
Yeah.
and then you have, when you look offensively, you have three insane pin hitters that are
Yep.
just absolutely lights out.
Hmm.
It's common to see one really good pin hitter on the best teams. You see two really good pin hitters, but yeah, Pitt has three. And yeah, and then their defense is just insane. Like I've run out of adjectives to describe this team because every single game I'm just like, I don't know, like I don't know what they can do
Right.
to
Yeah.
step up from here.
On the main analytics site we use called evolve.net, they are the top ranked team in everything except for receive rating, in which the are expected point when receiving, in which they are number 2 in the country behind Nebraska, and just barely two. Like they are the top in everything. Strength of schedule not, but that's not out of their control for the most part. Yeah, this is like, I mean, I don't mean to like be a tech guy who's just conceding defeat already. This does feel like playing the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors, though. Like it has that same vibe. They already had Steph, they already had Clay, they had Draymond, and then you throw KD into the mix, and it's like, why would they ever lose? And sure enough, they basically did. Um, yeah, list off the names here. Olivia Babcock, who freshman of the year, national freshman of the year last year, who scared the living daylights out of me. Valeria Vasquez Gomez, who has never once done anything nice for Georgia Tech. Cat Flood, Tori Stafford, who is the Clay Thompson in this situation, and Rachel Fairbanks. Tech is in their best spot, though, they've ever been, I would say, going into a match against a top ranked team, especially this early in the season, because Larissa Mendez, their sophomore out or right side, is hitting at a career high efficiency at 351. Bianca Bertolino is tops in EPA in terms of swings at 308 right now in terms of what is that? Hitting percentage. And Tamara Otene is at 253. So everyone's in pretty good shape. Compare that to Pitt, and only one person's hitting under 300. So
And it's Valeria Vasquez Gomez too. So
again,
it's not even like you can be like, oh, she's not that good. She's not hitting at a good hit. No, it's Valeria Vasquez Gomez.
yeah.
She's just playing a lot, so she's hitting at a lower
Well, okay. So
percentage.
it's a high volume thing. Okay, so when compared last year to this year, I mean, just aside from like personnel stuff, like what have you seen in terms of the physical volleyball that's looked better? I mean, you could say everything, but just like, is there a couple spots where like teams were able to get to them last year that's not as easy to get to them now?
So I think having Olivia and Tori with a year under their belt helps so much. Like they just look, first of all, more confident, which
Mm,
is scary considering how confident they were last season.
right.
They just look better. The team as a whole, I feel like, is in a weird way jumping higher. Like almost they're rarely not hitting over the block,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
again something that's just insane
Yeah.
to say. And then I think the other big thing that I've noticed is their defense is just like lights out, shutting down opponents. They're holding teams to a .133 hitting percentage. I don't know what your metric has, but in the NCAA stats, that's the sixth in the nation. And but honestly, I'd argue that number could be higher because they have been playing their second string players and even third string players quite a bit
Okay.
lately against some of those non tough teams. But I think that goes back to a name you missed was Emmy Klicka. She was on that first Final Four team 3 years ago, and she just dominates that defense. And then alongside Tori Stafford and Valeria Vasquez Gomez, when all three of those are in the back row, the chances of the ball hitting the ground is very small. And I think we saw that against Penn State.
Yeah.
Like Penn State just couldn't get a hit down against those three. And it's just, yeah. So, like you said, everything really, but like it just feels like the offense has taken a step up, the defense has taken a step up, and we're finally starting to see the middles really settle in too.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I think this year we have a new setter, we have a new libero, both transfers. Luana Emiliano came in from Texas Rio Grande Valley and basically set all their setting records, and single-handedly got them tournament worthy. And she's been a stud because she's basically that fourth, fifth year girl who's just like ready to go win something in with a power four school. So she's doing that. And then Sofia Velez comes in as our libero, our second straight JUCO transfer libero who was P4 worthy, which is a thing we've done twice now. But our recruiting is very exquisite, is how I'd put it, as it is international and local all at the same time somehow. Um, and they've fit right in, which has been very nice to carry on top of the fact we now have a second year. This is the second year of our main hitting core, which I guess similar to y'all, it's like, okay, put one season under your belt, but y'all's one season was Final Four worthy, which nuts. But then put it all together, things look better and they look a little bit more smoother. I'm trying to find defensively. So our favorite website for this, Husker Geek, it has died. And that was where we got all of our defensive stats, but it's gone. But what I can note is that our opponents generally score less and less as matches go on. We are outscoring opponents in the second set by nearly 80 points right now over 9 games, and about 60 to 70 points in the third set, and it's only about 30 in the first. So we are able to grind teams down really well. I think if there's any way to beat Pitt, before we get to the real points about that, it's like Tech has a way to grind people out defensively. That's our strength. Hitting is there, but we can serve well and we can defend really, really well when the time calls for it. Having seen what Pitt did against Penn State, I haven't seen it at that level, but then the best team they played has been, I guess it's been BYU is the best team they played, but even then, like Tech was kind of figuring things out still, and BYU has 5 new players, and they were figuring themselves out too. So it was a weird kind of match versus 2 established Titans like y'all are. Take me through the games that have been no questions to be asked yet, but where things got somewhat shaky or like caused you to possibly like, okay, someone might actually break them here. What gets them to those moments where they have gotten almost broken?
So there have been a couple sets where it's been close. I think USC in the very first set, they took them to 31-29.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I think that was early in the season. I want to say it was their third or fourth game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that came down to just, first of all, they were playing at USC. They hadn't played in over a week at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't think it was anything that they were doing wrong per se. It was just like kind of shaking the dust off for a second.
Yeah.
And then I think against Penn State, they were having a little bit of trouble against Taylor Trammell, their middle. I will say that's been one spot of Pitt's game that I haven't been like, I everywhere else is like insanely good, and I feel like the middles could still take a step up, but that's really the only place where I'm like, yeah, they could still take a step up. At the beginning of the season, Olivia Babcock, their right side, was leading in blocks. Now freshman Ryla Jones, has stepped into that position. I think the block is still impressive, because that's the thing here is it's everything has to have an asterisk on it, because like they're still playing lights out. So I'm being very, very nitpicky here.
Yeah.
And that is, I would like to see the middles get a little bit more in the action. And I think that's maybe where. I will say that one thing that gave them trouble against East Carolina, and again, asterisks on that because Rachel Fairbanks and Tori Stafford did not play, was East Carolina was throwing the tip over, and Marquette too. They were tipping the ball over, and for some reason, Pitt just wasn't getting it. And I think that's the thing that's a little bit more effort based. So how much is that not them not being good enough versus them being up 10 points and not really just like at that point they're like, oh, well, we can let this one go.
Right.
So again, it's so hard to say because they've just been so good. Like I thought they were going to drop a set against Penn State. I really did. I thought maybe if they didn't against Penn State, I've been impressed with Marquette this year. Maybe it's Marquette. I don't know anymore. I genuinely don't know.
Right. The operating at such a high level, what failure they're having to redefine what failure looks like for you evaluating the team, which is wild to think about. I did finally find some opponent hitting percentages. Only 2 teams have hit over 200 against us, and that's BYU and Florida at 235 and 275 respectively. Granted, we've played some not amazing teams in Coastal, Lipscomb, and Alabama State. All of them hit under 100 against us. South Alabama got to 129. Georgia only got to 129 in our match at their place. So Power 5 and UCLA hit under 200 at 171. So Power 4 teams are getting in about cracking about 215, 230-ish on average so far. which I will, if Pitt hits there, I will take it. But that might mean we're hitting 130 at the same time. So who knows what's actually going to be the deal there. Um,
Yeah,
yes,
their lowest hitting percentage this year is .253. They've hit above 300 in every single other game.
that
So
that is nuts. Yeah, and dig wise, our libero Sophia Villas at 3.6 digs a set. Our backline of Otene and Bertolino is averaging 6 combined digs a set, and then our setter Luana Miliano is at 2 digs a set. Uh, okay, yeah, that's wild. That is absolutely wild. I'll note in terms of context, this is only the fourth time Tech will have played a number one team ever in the regular season. And the team's been around since the 80s. Uh, they played Stanford in 1994, USC in 2004. Both of those are neutral site games. Their first true home or road game against the number one team was against Louisville in 2021 during their regular season. They then repeated that. That was our Elite Eight game that year. We also played Nebraska uh, in last year as the number one team. We have not won any of those 5 games. Pitt will be the first team to ever come to O'Keefe Gymnasium as a number one team in the country. We beat Louisville last year, who was the number 3 team in the country at the time we beat them in O'Keefe. So that not much good history standing in our way. I think at this point, I want to mention like the ACC as a whole just being better because I mean Tech's gotten better, Pitt's gotten better, Louisville never is bad at anything women's sports wise. And then you just add Stanford into the mix, and then SMU also happens to be ranked at the same time. So what? Right? I guess right now, if you so you came from Big Ten country because you had covered Wisconsin before this, so you've gotten front and center the 2 best volleyball conferences right there in front of you. What does anything feel different about ACC volleyball? I mean, it has to feel somewhat different right now, but like when you're comparing these 2 conferences, what stuck out this, especially this year with how much change there's been?
I think so in the AVCA rankings, both teams have 7 teams in them, which is just insane. But I
Yeah,
think at the very top, the ACC's top teams are playing better than the Big Ten's top teams.
yeah,
I'd argue at the other end, the Big Ten's lowest ranked teams, and I say ranked, not the unranked teams, but the lowest ranked teams are playing better than the ACC's lowest ranked teams.
mm-hmm.
However, the ACC's lowest ranked teams have pulled off wins against some of those higher ranked teams,
Yeah,
which makes me want to say that like maybe the ACC is better in playing in talent level, like from top to bottom, but the Big Ten has more experience in some of these like tighter games. So we're seeing that play out a little bit more. I mean, I think the biggest one that just I have so many questions about Miami because Miami looks so good.
yeah,
Beats number 1 Texas, beats number 25 Arkansas, but then gets swept by Ohio State. And I just like it's much like Pitt is hard to put into perspective. The ACC is really hard to put in perspective. But one thing I know for certain is that Pitt, Stanford, and Louisville look really, really, really good.
yep.
And I can't say that again about all 3 of the top 3 Big Ten teams. Nebraska looks good, but at the same time, Nebraska got swept by SMU. So I just like
Swept
it's
by
weird.
SMU, and then gave Louisville a pounding in their basketball arena last Sunday. Miami lost to Florida State last night in a 3-2 in Tallahassee, so a close, good rivalry match there. And yeah, they beat Arkansas as well, who was ranked when they played them. So what I've picked up on, and I think what generally nationally has been discussed, is the parity is better. My thought is the parity is better down the table in terms of like kind of giving that any given Sunday sort of moniker that if you're good enough, you have a shot at beating one of the best teams. But at the same time, it does feel like the best teams are a little bit better too in terms of raw talent. Um, it's just relative to everybody else, the gap isn't as large as it used to be. Um, like last year, I mean, I don't know why no one thought Nebraska was going to lose ever, and then sure enough, Texas just like we're going to have our one just perfect game when it matters most and go back to back in terms of titles. Um, Stanford being as good as they are, probably, it does feel like there is a real possibility where you get three of the four Final Four teams or ACC teams down the line. And that's excluding Tech and that's excluding Miami and Florida State from going on heaters and potentially sneaking in there. You've got to get around Wisconsin. You got to get around Nebraska somehow, probably. Um, I mean, probably not UCLA, but there's a teams that could do it. But it's like right now, if you had to, I mean, I know we're not gonna put money on this, but like if you were to pick a four right now, it feels like our top three are not exactly shoo-ins, but odds on probably there too.
Yeah, I just feel like when you look at it, Nebraska's the only one that I could see edging out Louisville. Or sorry, edging out any
Yeah,
ACC team.
yeah,
I think Louisville's playing better than Penn State. The rankings may say that the vice versa, but if Penn State can't even, you know, compete with Pitt, because let's be real, none of those sets were particularly close at the end.
no,
Um, so I mean, I'm not a betting woman. I've said this to Jack. I'm not a betting woman, but like my gut says you get three ACC teams in there. But I will say that I feel like the Big Ten does tend to get better by the end of the season.
Mhm.
Lee Feinswag from Volleyball Mag said this to me. He after the Penn State game, he said Penn State's going to get better. I don't see how Pitt gets better because they're already playing really well.
Right.
So we won't be surprised if you see teams like Wisconsin start to settle in, because Wisconsin just got beat by Minnesota last night
Mm.
in 5 sets. And I haven't been as impressed with Wisconsin as I usually am, but at the same time, they still have time to figure stuff out. So
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if things get shaken up by the end. But right now, I feel really confident in saying Pitt, Stanford, and Louisville are easily three of the most dominant teams in the nation, with
Yeah.
Nebraska up there. And I'm having a hard time putting Penn State into perspective because Pitt is so good.
Right.
Um, but Penn State is, you know, a surprise as of recent, I should say, a
Mhm.
recent surprise up there. So,
Gotcha. I'm looking ahead at y'all's schedule. After us, Boston College, Syracuse, y'all should take those handedly. But then it's not the easiest 5 game stretch. Back to back SMU, which everyone in the conference has a back to back against their travel pair, and then Cal at home, doable. Stanford at home, doable. It's still Stanford. Louisville back in Peterson, so y'all's basketball arena, doable. But you still play 4 ranked teams in 5 games.
mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem fun. And a lot easier after that. Uh, but getting, I mean, then you add us, so that's 6 ranked games in 9 matches. I mean, I guess what comes to mind about like how approachable that is now. I mean, y'all beat Oregon on the road, uh, in their building, beat Penn State at home in your building, but like that is what that you will not find a harder gauntlet in that stretch of games until the tournament when it's going to be something like that from the Sweet 16 on.
That gauntlet is really going to show us, can Pitt handle really tough teams? And I circle starred Stanford because other than Penn State, that is their best opponent.
Yep.
Rankings might shuffle from then on out, but I feel like the back to back of Stanford versus Louisville in a span of 5 days is going to tell us a lot,
Yep.
especially with it being heels of that SMU run.
On the Tech side of things, to actually talk about Tech for once now, this is the same stretch. Tech only plays 3 ranked games, SMU and Pitt this weekend, and then going to Louisville. But the games in that same time frame outside of that are Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and back to back against Clemson, and then the North Carolina stretch. There is a world where Tech is playing ahead of Pitt in terms of the ACC standings, which would be, I mean, and not just us, like other teams are going to have this opportunity as well. Um, the onus does feel like it's on Pitt to hold serve more than anything outside of this, because everyone else has winnable games. They have losable games, but they have, with just how the scheduling panned out, Tech got lucky to not be in that top tier of the scheduling rotation and having to play all of the best teams all the time. Um, this is kind of where Tech has to put the gas, has to be on the gas incessantly. If you lose to Pitt, fine. If you lose to SMU, fine. But there's a lot of other games here that you have to win to have a fighting chance at the conference come the end of the season, or to at least make it a game. I mean, I know that the conference is set up intentionally to have the best teams kind of beat each other up and get a bonus team in by winning the conference and beating the rest of the conference up. And so you get four or five at larges, and then your conference champ, as we saw with Florida State last year. So it'll be very interesting how this shakes out. Let's talk about the actual game that's happening on Sunday itself. Thankfully, we should be post-hurricane by then, so nothing in the way on campus, thankfully. They are still planning to play tomorrow night against SMU, which the worst of it should be gone by then anyway, so it should be a doable game. The thing here that Tech has done, they've done the 6-2 rotation a lot, so when they bring in their second setter and bring in another right side. Problem is that second setter, Eloise Suarez, has been dealing with a hand injury she suffered against Georgia and has not played since, and probably will not play this weekend either. Unlike football, volleyball does not require teams to report injuries, so it's kind of a guessing game, but she hasn't played recently and doesn't seem like she'll play anytime soon. So a lot of what Pitt was probably going to scout against us might not actually happen purely because of that. Our third string center, Ashlyn Goolsby, I would never play once against Pitt. That's not to demean her talent. She's quite good. She's at Tech for a reason. But you have to have basically all-American class level players to beat a team like Pitt. And our setter's kind of there, but not really there. So I think my question to you now is, Tech's good at defense. Is it? Yes, I think you mentioned earlier getting those middles engaged. I think if y'all get the middles engaged more than us, that's going to make life very difficult for Tech.
Yeah, unfortunately for Tech fans, I don't see Pitt not winning this game, just where we're at right now. Maybe if you had your full strength, maybe if you had a couple more weeks with your freshman setter.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a different.
Well, yeah, she's not going to play. Like they'll never play her all season.
Oh, well, sorry. You mentioned you have a new setter though, right?
Yeah, she is, but she is a fifth year.
Okay, so either way,
yeah,
adjusting to Pitt even with just the season is a challenge, and so I just don't. I think you'll give them issues defensively.
Mm-hmm.
However, Tori, Olivia, and Valeria have all proven that they can go up against really good defenses in Penn State and in Oregon. Yeah. And not really have a problem. I mean, Tori Stafford's hitting .409 and has played in every single major game. So there's really, honestly, my colleague Matt Scabaloni said it, I don't know if Tori Stafford has the advantage over any person she's going against, whether that's 6'9" Ann Smrek at Wisconsin or a 5'9" setter. I'm confident that Tori Stafford is going to find success in hitting the ball. And then Olivia Babcock is so powerful. And then you have the added bonus of Valeria. So I think that the one place you could get them is defensively. Mm-hmm. The problem is their offensive players are just playing astronomically well right now.
Yeah.
So I'm genuinely not sure if there's a defense in the country that could stop them right now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to put in perspective. I will say, I once again am not a betting woman, but I did tell Jack that if I was a betting woman, I think Pitt drops a set against Georgia Tech. I think you've got the environment aspect.
Yep.
It's a road match, and Georgia Tech is really good.
Yes.
I think Penn State might have been different if it wasn't a crowd of 11,000 Pitt fans screaming in Penn State the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's a true road match against a really good team for Pitt. And I mean, I said I thought that they'd drop a set against Penn State, so I don't know how meaningful my predictions are.
Right.
But I could see them dropping a set, especially if Tori or Olivia get maybe a little rattled at the beginning.
Right. Yeah. Last year, Tech did not get a set against Pitt at the game in O'Keefe. They got one the year before in McCamish at first McCamish game. This was a bit that I just remembered. The thing that has been better about our offense is what I'm calling pitch selection. They're better at more kinds of shots. Like they're better at that tip shot to throw people out of system. Like anyone on our team will throw a change up and just try and drop it a foot behind the line just to try to get teams out of rhythm. We do have a height disadvantage pretty much against any good team. Our second middle blocker, DeAndre Pierce, is definitely the smallest middle blocker we play of any of the big teams that play in those games. Like she is not large. She gets above the net. She is still very, very good. But we're not touting out a 6'5", 6'7" girl as our second middle blocker to put a presence up there. So that's where the height and being able to teams that can hit over the ball really can get to us is in situations like that. So I do wonder if part of the game plan is try and put in more. We have 3 or 4 right sides that can add height, and I wonder if they would try just to roll them out a little bit more frequently than usual, just to have something at the net because DeAndre can do it, but it requires better timing. She's got to get it. She's got more place, like literally more distance to travel to get to a ball compared to other players. And Pitt's not going to move slowly. We don't like to move slowly, but Pitt's going to match us and probably beat us in terms of just speed to the ball. So it'll take a lot of the same things that happened last year against Louisville when we beat them, which is just an unreal game from our middles, and hitting out the wazoo and serving. We're one of the best serving teams in the country. Bianca Bertolino and Babcock have 2 of the best technical like jump serves out there. Babcock's the only one I've seen hit the ball harder than Bertolino ever. And our gym, I mean, I know you haven't been there, but it is a tiny little box. There is things look faster inside that building because there is just no space to go anywhere. And that place gets loud. If it's anything like the Louisville game last year, I will require earplugs to maintain my hearing the next day if things go well for us. But outside of that, it'll be interesting. That's no doubt about that. If Tech wins, again, it'll be their first ever win against a number 1 team in the country. They never played any of them at home before, so this feels like as good of a shot as they'll ever have. I just wish Pitt had done anything but win everything leading up to now.
Yeah, 30 straight sets and likely coming into your gym on a 33 straight set streak.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean that made the games
Their
ahead
whole season is impressive.
You guys got Clemson to start. So you'll be in Little John, which is a nice, funky little arena with a drop ceiling. The ball hits that ceiling all the time, so they'll be dealing with that. And then our weird grid ceiling from a gym that was built many, many decades ago. So you got that going for you. I will note. What was I going to note? No, yeah, these Tech's got a better litmus test going into this than y'all do. Like this is going to be probably the most realist litmus test y'all will have because you can blame Penn State for being early in the season. Clemson, y'all are going to steamroll. SMU could really bring it to us and bring it to 5 if we're not careful. So, just for Tech's sake, we need to not play 5 on Friday. If we do, fine, whatever. We can grind teams. We beat BYU in 5 because we can just grind teams defensively. So everyone stay healthy. Play fast and just win, please, is where I'm at. Lastly, you are definitely one of the few people out here in the country writing for a local paper, basically beat writing for a college volleyball team, which the number 1 team in the country deserves, no doubt about it. I do this as a hobby, and I'm kind of the only one here in Atlanta doing that, which I am very disappointed about. But is there anything unique to being a volleyball specific writer now? I know you'll do other stuff come spring for basketball and stuff like that, but like what? You're one of the very few doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because my job, I came in being brought in as essentially a features and enterprise reporter for college sports, and we have 5 Division I schools in our distribution area. So having come off of helping Dennis Punzel cover Wisconsin and Madison, I realized that there was a need pretty early on last season, and unfortunately, our readers just weren't as engaged, and so I wasn't being sent to cover many things. I was writing stories here and there. I was at the Georgia Tech game in the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, and then during the NCAA tournament, like I was writing multiple stories a week. So coming around this season, I sat down my editors and I was like, look, guys, we need to be giving this team the attention they deserve. So it honestly, it was never the intention to become a volleyball beat reporter. I love it. It's been really fun. I have no volleyball background until I really got to Wisconsin, and it's been a lot of learning on my feet, and it helps when you're covering the best team in the nation right now. But it is unique. Like you said, we're fortunate that we have 3 people at media members at every single game. I'm the only mainstream outlet at every single game. And by that, I mean like a major newspaper or a major TV outlet. The other guys are the student newspaper and the Sports Illustrated Pitt blog.
Got it.
They both do fantastic work. Like
Yeah.
the three of us are a little we bounce off each other like crazy.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's pretty unique and it's a lot of fun, honestly. Like I'm glad I'm able to give this team the attention they deserve.
It's good for the entire sports media ecosystem. I think that volleyball has a good, I mean, growing as fast as it's growing, it's nice because it can give writers in our age bracket, which is mid-20s, like someone to cover that no one else has really claimed. Like that's fresh territory that no major outlet has gotten. Like ESPN's kind of done it, but that's on the TV side for the most part, and pre-existing television contracts that they're kind of grandfathering in Louisville's popular. I mean, not Louisville. Volleyball's popularity right now. A double L word got me there. So no, I'm glad you're doing it. I'm glad. I wish you could be here in Atlanta this weekend. Great. That said, there is room for literally one person on the desk, and thankfully I get it. But maybe our AJC person steals it from me this weekend. We'll see. Abby, thanks for doing this. Where can people find you if they want to read about Pittsburgh sports in general?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Abby Schnable, and then I always say the best way to find my articles is to Google Pittsburgh Post-Gazette Abby Schnable, and it'll lead you to my top trending things, or just on the Post-Gazette website, search my name, and it'll give you all of our stuff. But we cover a lot. Obviously, Pittsburgh's a huge sports town, and I'm fortunate to get to highlight all of our Division I and Division II schools in the area.
Nice. I just remembered we really need to win this so that it doesn't end up being the Steelers and Pitt volleyball that win in Atlanta in the same calendar, or not calendar month, but
at least you don't have to worry about Pitt volleyball fans taking over your region.
No, that we don't. Thank goodness. Don't show. Yeah, Pitt people don't show up. There's only 1,200 spots. We need all of them, please. All right. Thanks, Abby. Thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of Science of the Southland. You can find all of our written material up on FromTheRumbleSeat.com. We will have had some articles up this week just about football in general. We'll have some volleyball recaps of these two games, of the SMU game, which happens tomorrow or today, Friday, depending on when you're listening, and then the Pitt game on Sunday. If you are in Atlanta and you have tickets to either game, please show up if you can. I know Friday might be a little rough with the hurricane and everything, so the game is still, as I mentioned, still is planned to be happening. So of course, be safe and whatnot. But Sunday it should be cleared up, and let me tell you, our team feeds off of the energy inside of O'Keefe in a really, really big way. I know Sundays aren't usually sell out and everything like that, but if you can be there, be there. It can be possibly one of the most historic matches in Georgia Tech history, bar none. We'll be back on Sunday with a recap of the weekend. No football this weekend, so I guess enjoy the other games. Do what you got to do. I have 2 weddings to go to because Georgia Tech people know to schedule their weddings not during Tech football weekend, so that's fun. So keep finding us. You can find me on Twitter at Jack Nicholas. Jake, who is our usual co-host as well, you can find it at Jake Grant 98. I upload all these to YouTube, so if you want to listen on YouTube, you can listen there. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, I think it's on Google, or you just click it on our website and just go from there, however suits best for you. I forgot to mention Section 103. They are the best Georgia Tech gear you can find out there. If you want to get stuff, go there. You can use code FTRS for 10% off, and you get free shipping if you have any order over $80. Or just go to O'Keefe on Sunday and just buy a volleyball shirt right there. They have their shirts right there. It's really cool. Thanks for listening, y'all. We will be back very soon.